So I suppose we'll just both introduce ourselves first. My name's Martin Taylor. I'm head of content at StartVR. We're a dedicated virtual reality content studio. And we've been working with these guys at Frameset Match on this project, which I'll talk about any second. Phil, do you want to just introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Phil Stuart-Jones. I'm VFX Soup at Frameset Match. I've been there for 23 years. Basically, I've done pretty much everything that can be done until recently, when I hadn't done any VR till about a month and a half ago. So this will show you where I had the learning curve.
Baptism by fire.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've been kind of tinkering away in virtual reality for the last 3.5 years, and for the last year we've set up shop. It's a very, very fast-growing industry. It's an industry that requires new storytelling techniques, and as a team we've gone from 2 people last February to 15 as of this week. So VR Noir, so I'll just go through that first off. So what is it? Well, basically it's a detective crime drama. We wanted to approach a traditional kind of story that people are familiar with and port it into an unfamiliar medium, which is virtual reality. Capturing environments in VR is one thing, the kind of 360 video element to it, but actually telling stories and coming up with narrative techniques is the challenge. So we aimed for like an 8 to 12 minute pilot episode, and that will be kind of sent out for free on Gear VR and all of the other VR platforms, and in order to get it into a kind of 6-part series. So this is a story, like a little teaser of a female detective. We wanted to kind of mix it up. How does it feel to be most of the audience are male. How does it feel to be a female character, for example? She's a detective. She's that kind of typical noir storyline where she's a bit broken down and she gets visited by a femme fatale, gets sent on this kind of journey of transformation. So one of the things we wanted to kind of mix it up as much as possible, and so we decided to bring together traditional film crews, because that's the other thing with VR, is that a lot of the new techniques seem to be ditching all of the old techniques, and we wanted to kind of try and fold in traditional techniques as well. There's a VR development team. To get stuff into VR headsets is very much a development process, so you're running stuff through game engines such as Unity and Unreal Engine, and for that, you need game designers and coders and stuff like that. So that's actually where we are at right today, is taking the content that we captured. We've been running all the challenges through these guys, and now we're trying to get it into an application, and it's a massive headache, and but exciting at the same time. And then obviously post-production crews. So this is where these guys come in. We approached them a few months ago, and they said, hell yeah, let's do something that we have no idea about the outcome. Let's see how we go. And the time, clock is ticking. It's actually launching at Vivid in early June. We've got literally days left to kind of finish this process, and it's still going. So the collaboration, this is just a shot from set. You can see the amount of people that were kind of involved in the production. And it's a collaboration between 3 main entities. So with the film school, they're very interested in obviously the narrative techniques and creating new storytelling techniques in this new medium. They're doing a study on it, and they're also looking to, as an outcome, to be able to kickstart a virtual reality kind of teaching course as well. So there's a whole bunch of them on the left there. Right in the center there, you can actually see Nathan Anderson. He's the showrunner. It was his kind of genesis, this project. And then on the right-hand side, skulking away in the darkness, is the VFX team. That Phil's in there somewhere. And we're just capturing stuff as fast as we can and throwing it off over there for kind of checking. As I say, Frameset Match came in, and it's been a very close kind of collaboration to get the results. I'll just give you a quick rundown of the production and the kind of tech involved. We wanted to not use 360-degree cameras as much as possible. In fact, in this production, there has been 0 360-degree cameras. It's all new techniques. We wanted to kind of think about telling stories in a virtual space and start from scratch. We know we might make mistakes along the way. We've made a whole bunch of them, and I'll go into those very briefly before I pass over to Phil. But we're excited that we kind of, along the way, we might come up with something genuinely new. So some of those techniques are compositing. So we've got green screen against with actors with CG environments. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. This tiling technique, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and also with abstract framing, and that is to include traditional camera shooting as well. Because with 360 shooting, you can't have a close-up shot. Everything's in the shot. So we wanted to try and include real close-up kind of performances as well. We decided to make a custom rig. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. It was our frenemy in the end. So with the technique, so this is the film school, and we've got traditional kind of shoot out on the street and on location. These techniques were used for this kind of these montage sequences where they're like frames that kind of come up in black, and the character kind of walks between the frames, and they're wrapped around you in the virtual space. And what it meant is that we can actually include close-up shots and have this real kind of emotive performance, which 360 shooting doesn't really allow so much. Aside from the traditional techniques, which we came up with that idea to include, a lot of very, very technical kind of VFX calculations. There's Phil actually nearly getting his fingers run over. And there's a lot of stereo test charting, which worked initially, and then we got set back a little bit. Phil's got a video about that. And this little image over here, we've got CG buildings with window insets from a surveillance scene as well. As I say, we also did green screen performances for CG sets. I'm sure Phil will talk about some of the challenges with that. It was a big headache, and one of the things with compositing these kind of shots into a 360-degree wraparound environment is that lenses are imperfect and CG is perfect. And so aligning those two things in an all-encompassing environment is very, very tricky. That was one kind of technique there, but we also wanted to include live action kind of performances. It's often said that VR and the kind of this immersive space that you find yourself in is a bit akin to a stage play mixed with a magic trick, because you find yourself almost on stage and surrounded by the action and the performances, and you're guiding viewers' attention with direction and misdirection to kind of work the story. So we wanted to play with that, and so we decided to build an entirely closed set and hang the camera in. You can just see it's on a boom here over the top. We had it all planned out, it was all perfect. It's on this perfect nodal head, and we'll get back to that in a second. So some of the challenges involved, again, were just a lot of technical calculations. This is a CG building with windows, and you can see a lot of brains are kind of being put onto that to kind of figure out the right angles to shoot the insets. It didn't always go to plan. As you can see, Peter Magnus is at the back of the room. He's part of our team. Poor guy had more trigonometry to pull off on that day than he probably wanted to. So that was one of the big challenges. This was one of our biggest challenges. This custom rig, we had this engineered, and so we could get these two Blackmagic cameras. They're kind of sitting on their side. When we got it onto set, we found the lenses weren't particularly wide, so you had to produce an entire performance within the field of view of the camera. And the basic technique with this is that we have the camera in a fixed position, we film a performance, and then tile the rest of the set. And then how many views did it end up being?
39.
39 tiles to kind of stitch together into an immersive kind of environment, and that was more of a challenge for you than it was for us. So we were really relying on this thing, and we were just about to roll. Phil's got a video of it when he stands up, but it basically completely spazzed out and nearly ripped all the cables out, and we were set back about 3 or 4 hours. We ended up having to use this rig instead, which is basically the same rig on a tripod, like a big industrial monopod from the studio. But as you can see, the cameras are actually raised above the nodal point where it's fine on a pan to create this kind of stitch. But once you start capturing areas of the floor, there's a lot of disparity. And so, yeah, huge. We took a punt on the day, we had no choice, but then these guys have had to deal with the consequences, fixing it in post ever since. And yeah, that's it. I'm going to hand you over to Phil because that was everything that that was the aim and the capture. And Phil's going to talk about how they're still trying to pull it off.
Yes. Okay, so like I said, basically a month and a half ago, I'd never done any VR at all. None. I'm a flame operator by heart. I go to Nuke when I need to, which is quite often. So we were invited to come along and try it out. And we said, well, we don't know what we're doing, but we have to learn because it's coming. So we went along. We had a few. Sorry, got to switch myself over.
There we go. Sorry, mate.
That's all right.
Over.
Oh, look at all these things. Oh, hang on. Something's happening. Oh, there we go. Back here. How can I open that? Oh, it doesn't matter. Paint will do. So there you go. There's our first test. So this was basically, once again, shot in the studio, 360, stitched together. And from that, that was Ocular VR at the time. Sorry, I have to hit record on that, don't I? And that was our first introduction to stitching. Our little man there. The lenses for the cameras, like we said before, 2 Blackmagic Minis, spun that way because we wanted to do stereo. They arrived the day of the shoot. Essentially they were 14 mil lenses, Peter will tell me, 14 mil. And by the time we got them in Blackmagic Mini and used half the sensor, the effective field of view was like 54 degrees. So not very much to use. So that's why we ended up having to plate 12 times up there, 12 times up there, 12 times down there. I'll just run this. Oh, breakdown player. Off you go. Should be there. There we go. So this is basically us on set. Sorry, record. Make sure this is recording. Hang on a second. There we go. So there's our wonderful little there's our wonderful little rig there. This is basically us on set, stereo alignment, that type of stuff. So basically, the idea of shooting without a dedicated 360 camera was very silly. But we wanted to try it, we wanted to see how to do it. So the idea, especially incorporating something, if you've got someone in green screen that you want to incorporate in a 360 world, do you want to shoot them on a GoPro against green? No, you don't. You want to shoot them on a decent camera, then you can comp them in later and make it all work. So that's Dylan there, doing all these little things. That's a little stitch there. Anyway, so what we had was our wonderful camera. I'll just stop doing that. Which was all ready to go. Perfect nodal 360 up and down, was absolutely beautiful. You'll see here, it's Martin's fault because he was the closest person to it. Hope we've got audio here. So you can see it starts, off it goes, starts going around in circles. Basically, you can't hear, unfortunately you can't hear the grinding of it, which is all the gears and the belts suddenly just shredding themselves to pieces. And so then we bring out the screen. It's a bit like at the horse races where you lift up the screen and yeah, good night, Mr. Camera. Back to tripod. So we thought, well, this looks at pictures, it stitches them all together. How hard can it be? It must be able to work out how things overlap and stitch in. What no piece of stitching software does is allow for a non-nodal camera to be incorporated with a nodal camera. So literally we thought, what the hell are we going to do? Now luckily at that point we had our Ocular VR and we thought, how are we going to do this? And so in good old-fashioned compositing, we just smashed it together. So interestingly enough, we put all the cameras in, as imperfect as they are, whacked them round. So everything that was nodal, stitched together perfectly. And then everything that was non-nodal, stitched together perfectly. And then basically we found that because they didn't match when we put them all together, so then we were able to go through using CARAVR and actually pretty much grid warp everything until it worked, which is something I can guarantee you don't want to do because it takes a lot of time. I'll just get up. Where's Nick gone? So I'll show you quickly our little setup for our stitch, which is here. Now there's no footage into this, so that's not a mistake. But 32 and 4K plates. So every one of these plates is 4K. So it's just, 36 around, and then the action that we inserted into it was also 4K. So 39 4K plates gone into the stitcher trying to put it together. It's not a fast process, but in the end it worked, which was absolutely great because we would have been stuffed without it. Let's go to here and let's have a look at the apartment. So I'll just go into our little apartment here. So this is basically our little apartment at the top there. You can pretty much see we've got a couple of things happening here. We've got a guy here who gets shot by this gunman who's over here in the corner. And all of this is green screen. So, let's go down to there. I'll show you our little views here. Oh, green screen for the windows.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Where are we? So basically, once it's hard to, it's a 4K, whoops. So we had three positions that we moved around. So the idea is that within what we're doing, we create a position where people can look around the room and find things. Because what's the point of having VR if you can't look around and find stuff? So we made plates, we made loops for people to walk around. As you can see, he comes in, he shoots him, he falls down, the wife runs out, the guy puts down the gun and walks out. So if you imagine, all that wasn't shot. All those were shot with individual little bits and pieces. So I'll give you a quick look at that. Let's use our 360. So pretty much these are the plates that we shot. Now, remembering they're sideways, they're on almost a fisheye lens. If you have a look, it's basically we just plated it around like this. And then we looked up or down and played it around like that. And then we looked up the roof and played that around. The roof, we're in the process of cleaning that up. You can see it's just a flat plane at the moment. But you get little problems. You might be able to see down here, there's kind of little warps and things like that that still need to be cleaned up. But considering these plates didn't match, they didn't look the same. So basically we went into Nuke and we grid warped them all so they fitted all together nicely.
How long has that taken you, that shot?
The stitching, it's still taking us. It's still coming. The stitching is probably the hardest thing. We set a render off last night. I think it was about 8 hours to render out the frames. The other thing with VR is the plates don't change a lot. They go for a long time. So your action is like a play. Everyone does their place. You know, there's no cuts, there's no stopping in between takes. So you get one take and you have to put them all together. So your plates are 4K, there's 39 of them, and they go for 1.5 minutes. So your render times are great. But the best thing about CARAVR that I've found so far is the fact that every piece of 2D compositing knowledge I have is useful. So literally, if we've got our plate up here that we can see, which is our plate of our little murder scene here, just have a look at that. You see down here there's a little green screen. Where what's a photo frame? So literally what we can do is we can go into that and isolate where our camera is looking at. And we can give it a field of view, we can work out how long how big it has to be, we can rotate up and down, we can look at the floor. So painting out the tripod that it was on, we basically just rotated our camera down, painted it out as we would with normal 2D techniques, and then literally the software works out where all those pixels have to go back into your stitch. So whatever you do in 2D, it simply spits it back out into 360 and cleans it all up for you. It's great. So for example, here we've got our little photo frame, we've got a photo here which we need to put in there, which is down there. So we just, well, come back down here. I'm only doing this because it's easy and I'm doing it real time. So we can just go into here and do a little corner pin on that. That's good. One down here. Where's my corner pin gone? Oh, that's my corner pin. That's not so good. Anyway, so I'll do a transform. It's because it's the wrong spot. Try that. As I said, I'm usually a flame operator. So there we go, we've got our corner pin. Literally, we get it, stitch it into where it needs to go. I didn't mention that we were doing all this in stereo too, or we were trying to. It's interesting, Mike talking about stereo. Stereo is a real problem in VR because literally you've got your two eyes as well, so you've got nowhere to hide. But it's something you can get around and increases the actual experience, if you like. So anyway, I've stitched him into there. So literally all I do is go back down here, and suddenly my photo frame's in my picture. I don't have to worry about anything else. And you do all your techniques, you can layer things over the top of it, and it's so easy. It's kind of demystified the whole 360 thing. And you go from, how do I do this, to, I can do this. And the tools make it so easy. These are all green screen windows. They've all been comped in with a skybox. Changing the time on the clocks, all those type of things, pretty easy. We're going to do a little bullet time thing. So the thing is, when you're watching something in 360, you don't know what to look at. So you can quite often miss things. So when the guy walks into the office, we're going to do something that drags you to look over there, and he's going to shoot a gun, and you're going to look around at where the gunshot is. And then we're going to go into a bullet time effect, and the bullet time's going to scroll across and hit our guy, and then he's going to die. And all that sounds hard, but it's actually not. So I'll be going in, my 3D guys have mapped it all out, they're going to give me a bullet, and I'll be able to go in there and use all my usual 2D distortions and things like that, make trails off the bullet, but do it all in 2D and just simply wrap it in a 360, and it's all live. It's not scary. That's the thing. I think we were very scared when we started. We're not that so scared now. I'll just open up something else here. Green screen CGI. We mentioned before about lenses. Lenses are imperfect, and they will bake in your disparity between your foregrounds and your backgrounds. So the VFX supervisor, the CGI supervisor comes in, takes all these measurements, does his photogrammetry, and makes his set. And then he goes, yeah, I've made the set, it's perfect. You get there, you layer over the green screen that you've got, and you put it into lat long, you try and push the person into lat long, and once again, they don't fit. We've got a scene where a girl walks from a door forward and sits down, which is this girl here. But the height of the doorway is different to what the CGI's rendered out. So we basically had to go through and underdistort all of our plates, and then basically we could put them back through CGI, or back through Nuke, and then we'd alter our CGI, all the camera angles and everything, so she would actually walk from the right spot to where we wanted her to go. And then once again, you can see here, this is just a 2D comp. I've literally taken what is this green screen, rotated it around a bit, pulled my key, done all those things, whacked a light wrap on them, so they're like using all those techniques that we use to stick things into CGI, and pretty much just put that back in, let the hardware do all the work. So there they are now, they're stuck in that scene in the CGI, they've got the nice little light wrap on there, there's a bit of dodge going around the shadow, but like I said, we're halfway through, we'll fix all that eventually. And then the scene's pretty much done. They do their little talk and everything, it's all fine. We've got all sorts of nice things. So when you look at your comp back through the glasses, and the other thing is you've got a pretty good tool to be looking at what you've done back again. So you always take your things and go back downstairs, put the Oculus on and have a look around, because you'll always find things. But say, for example, in this scene, when we spin around, this scene is actually, this is the CGI 3D. There's things like, fire extinguishers and things like that, which you're sitting right on top of. It's quite interesting, because when you put the headset on, you turn around, you feel you're going to bump your head on the wall. Then one of the other things we had was the montage sequence, which we talked about before, and one of the things with VR was trying to work out a way of telling stories, and we came up with a little montage. So pretty much the idea is that we've shot all these bits and pieces, and you want to try and follow and create a journey along. So we basically just built all our little 2D images, and we use that. When you think about motion graphics in VR, you can't slide a graphic in from the side, as we've all done for the last 20 years, because there's no side. Where's it going to come from? You've got to think of a new way of thinking to actually do and tell those type of stories. So this one's kind of half it. But then we've got the other problem of you have to think about, where do we start? Where do you start looking? Where do you end up looking? And if someone's looking forward and then you've got your glasses on and you do this all the way around, you might end up looking the wrong way when you finish. So where do you end up on your next scene? There's a lot of things you've got to think about when you do all that. But once again, this is pretty easy. You just whack in a 360 camera into CARAVR, position all your bits and pieces everywhere in 3D, and then even better is you can get your camera, put another camera, offset it by a bit, instant stereo 360. So it's very, very handy. What else we've got here? And then, cleaning tripods and things, it's all really easy. The CARAVR, I keep on saying to people, a month and a half in to this, we could probably do any VR job that anyone brought to us and said, we've got a VR job, can we do it? And we said, we've got the tools. So as soon as they become available, the CARAVR is it will have to go into the shopping list to do a VR job, because it makes things so simple. We've got Metal, we've got a couple of the other programs, and they're good, but for compositing and being able to take stuff and composite in the way that we know how to composite and make things look good, it's a magic tool set, basically. And I think that's the only other thing is we've got the VR can make you very sick. So your biscuits, ginger biscuits are the way to go. You'll get really fat. Honey jumbles are my favourites. I know Pete likes the ginger things. So it's an interesting thing. I'm going to go from here, this talk tonight, back to work, set off a few more renders, and we're going through it. But I think the thing is we've demystified it a lot. And you can see the quality of say, this picture at 4K, with your 4K plates. It's quite stunning when you get into the headsets, because you can actually see everything really clearly. It's not just for cardboard. It's not making things hard to see. So working in high quality footage, and trying to work out how to tell a story is an interesting thing. It's a challenge. Yeah. Awesome.
We're going to be working right down to the wire to finish the project. And if you want to see it, it's on at the film school afters from the 7th to the 9th of June, as part of Vivid. And So there'll be a kind of, there'll be a big kind of presentation about it. It'll be in the Gear VR where you can watch it there. But we've also, because a lot of these sets are immersive already, we've ported it into the HTC Vive where you can, there's one of the scenes where it's like a rooftop surveillance scene where you pick up binoculars and you're kind of, spying on windows, looking for information. You will actually be able to do that in the Vive where you can pick up the hand controllers and walk around a CG-generated rooftop and actually look in the building across the way. So it's a really immersive experience, and yeah, we're excited to see it finished and out there. And then, yeah, on to the next one, next challenge for you, Phil.
Exactly, thanks.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Thank you.